such as the tolerization of the allogenic fetus and its placenta and the immune responses to maternally acquired infections. As a human herpes virologist, it was also the chicken marriage virus, as well as the many herpes viruses of other animal species, some of which, for example, horses, cows, and humans, have 3 or more different herpes virus types, which stimulated my interest in their evolution in 1974. And you can't see it, but there's chickens and marrics right there under birds. I then followed the advice of Australian novelist Burnett to further explore evolutionary aspects of viruses and the immune system. During this sabbatical in Perth, I helped to identify the first marsupial herpes virus in a wallaby and to further the knowledge on the immune function of the thymus, most useful when we perform later thymic transplants in children with AIDS and in the macaque monkeys with simian SIV. I also took the opportunity to write the first review on the evolution of viruses with an Australian colleague. My earlier focus as a researcher and teacher of infectious diseases had been not only from the clinical standpoint of diagnosis, prevention, and treatment, but also their interactions with the more basic microbiology, pathogenesis, immunology, and epidemiologic aspects. As the slide exemplifies, over the last decade or two, there are now many more evolutionary and other basic concepts, as well as a large array of novel applied technologies. Their integration is currently being recognized as the extended synthesis and has led to applications towards a predictive human medicine, particularly at the genetic and genomic level. It appears to me equally important that similar approaches be used for animals and that a common predictive One Health be applied to detect particularly the dynamic changes of short generation microbes and the host immune systems. Toward this end, the differentiation of Mito between Darwinian medicine and evolutionary medicine indicates that the latter would be the best to assist currently the practicing physician or veterinarian and predict the future of such microbial issues as antibiotic resistance, zoonoses, emerging infections, and the genetic, epigenetic, genomic aspects of the host microbiome and immune responses, circling the loop back to the more practical medical and public health interventions. I would like now to summarize briefly some obvious but perhaps not well appreciated bonds between children and animals that link pediatricians and veterinarians. The front page story of a recent Sunday New York Times magazine best illustrates the close links between pets and domestic animals, children and their germs. Keep in mind that we need not only to consider the host microbiome bacteria, but also the latent and lytic viruses, in other words, bacteriophages of the bacteria that populate the human and animal host. Although there are many good outcomes from the closeness between children and animals, there can also be several bad ones, as reviewed by the new CDC companion animal practice recommendations. I don't know if Carol Rubin is here or not, but she has just finished that work and it'll be coming out shortly. Finally, I was particularly happy a couple of years ago to have my young mentor, Jim Steele. And let me just add parenthetically that Andy started out his EIS career at CDC in Jim Steele's laboratory there, so he worked on zoonotics. They agreed to co-author a chapter with Russ Currier for a symposium we co-organized in the Nobel Mansion on the evolution of sexually transmitted diseases in animals and humans. Having had the pleasure as the only pediatrician to attend his 100th birthday celebration in April of this year, I was glad to have the opportunity to talk to 3 past presidents of the AVMA, developing stronger ties between pediatrics and veterinary medicine, a natural link for One Health. End.
Can I get everybody to stand up?
Yeah, good.
Stand up. Put your arms over your head. Keep them up there. Go to TED Talks. Look for Ann Cuddy, C-U-D-D-Y. and she'll tell you about how posture can change the way that our brains work. Basically, by standing and assuming a posture like this, you're increasing your testosterone, you're decreasing your estrogen, you're increasing your attention span and your creative thinking. And Cuddy, C-U-D-D-Y. Thanks, everybody. See, look at all that energy.
You're on.
I'm on. My name is Will Hueston. I'm thrilled to visit with you today and share a little bit about where I've come, my journey, as Bill Stoke talks about, the serendipity. I'm a college dropout that became a community organizer, civil rights organizer back in the early 70s. Ultimately went back to college and got a veterinary degree, went into private practice, from there into working for a farmer co-op. From there, got my first academic position at The Ohio State University. Recruited by the U.S. Department of Agriculture for a fantastic 9 years, developing National Animal Health Monitoring System, and then being seconded to the UK to work on the BSc Epidemiology, returning to head the policy staffs for veterinary services in the United States, returning to academia again to help ACVPM pioneer public health residency programs for veterinarians. And this journey is a continual learning experience. So I'm here in the 8 minutes that remain to share with you some of my concern and some of the potential that exists for veterinarians and veterinary medical education to take a larger role in terms of fostering leadership in global food security. My premise is that right now, veterinary medicine plays an extremely small and diminishing role. And our veterinary medical education trajectory, unfortunately, I think is reducing the potential for that role as it currently stands. Let me start by talking about what is food security. There are 3 pillars: food availability, food access, and food use. Now, by the way, this is the global definition of food security used by the WHO, the FAO, the OIE, so the global human health, animal health, and organizations, and the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. It includes not only this availability, access, and nutritious aspects of food, also food safety, also food defense. It's a very inclusive term. Food safety is not a simple problem to solve. It's too complex to fully understand. No individual, no discipline, no research institute, no country, no company can completely understand food security. There is no technical solution. The Bill Gates Foundation and bazillions of dollars from a number of large foundations are not going to come up with a magical technology cure so that we can say food security is resolved. It, however, is compelling and demands that we take action. The challenge is that every action we take will perturb the very nature of this global food security challenge, often with unanticipated and unintended consequences, some of which are worse than the problem we sought to address. So food security represents a system of systems, all interconnected. And food security, therefore, fits the definition of what some are called wicked problems, also called social messes, also called complex adaptive problems. Food security, in addition, encompasses a whole range of polarities or paradoxes. So opposites that cannot exist independently. And the most clear example that you might use is breathing in and breathing out. To survive, we must breathe in and breathe out. And yet we see in front of us for food security a whole series of these polarities, and unfortunately many among us go to one extreme or the other. So intensive, extensive, animal, plant, local, global. So if I made this a true-false question, as is 95% of the tests that were pointed out. I think Bill McCullough said the proof's in the pudding. Let's look at the tests we use in veterinary education. They're mostly multiple choice or true, false. So here's the multiple choice. You get a chance, you have to answer either one or two. So global food security. Is it intensive? Well, does it depend on intensive agriculture or extensive agriculture? I'm quizzing you, so you have to raise your hands. Intensive agriculture, raise your hands. Extensive agriculture, raise your hands. Chickens and unwilling to raise your hand are most of us. The challenge is these are not either or questions. They're both and. They're both and. And the veterinary profession can be part of stimulating this paradigm shift so that we can make incremental progress. Because for the very complexity of these wicked problems like global food security are also the fantastic potential, because there are unlimited opportunities for us to make incremental positive progress. So food security demands that we nurture shared leadership. Why is simple. There's no one in charge. Who's in charge of global food security? You might say Jim Steele. That's appropriate in this meeting, I suppose. But who's in charge of global food security?
FAO.
Yeah, it's a shared, Peter's saying FAO. And FAO has no legal authority. We all have a shared responsibility, and there's no overall authority. So where the opportunity in veterinary medical education, in my mind, is to teach the ability to catalyze collective action. That's the definition of leadership. We're not talking about leaders meaning a person in a position with a title. We're talking about leadership, the ability to catalyze collective action, to motivate people and organization towards shared goals, to train our next generations of veterinarians to work as part of transdisciplinary teams, just as this last presentation did a wonderful job of doing. Talking about how pediatricians and veterinarians and humane surgeons talked about it as well, coming together across many disciplines, rising above those disciplines to think differently around the world, about the world around us, and to equip us and those that come after us to manage polarity in a positive way. In 2008, we had a meeting at the Rockefeller Bellagio Center, thanks to the Rockefeller Foundation. If you look there, there are about 18 countries represented. I think Carol's in the room. This is the meeting we've been talking about. There were probably, 7, 8, 9 different disciplines, all the major continents of the world, gender balanced, broad ethnicity. And basically, the challenge was made to design a global food systems leadership model. And I had the pleasure of facilitating that along with Lonnie King, who'll speak shortly. And this is the model that that group came up with. One of the most powerful learnings of that was that our colleagues, really it was from the Far East, said, it begins with ways of being. That global food systems leaderships really start with it's value-driven, and that's this courage, self-awareness, passion, credibility, empathy, spirituality. And then there are 5 major buckets, or some would say domains of competency. Communication, working across boundaries, disciplines, strategy and vision and strategic thinking, the ability to make change and achieve results, and influence. So what are the implications then for veterinary education? If we, in fact, are going to empower veterinarians to help foster to help catalyze collective change for the betterment of the world in the context of global food security. Our focus is skill building, not facts. We need to equip veterinarians to contribute to a transdisciplinary effort, and we need to broaden experiential learning to equip veterinarians to celebrate diversity, to think creatively, to accept uncertainty, and to manage polarity. And we need to stretch. We're too cloistered, we're too narrow-minded, we're too limited in our perspectives. We need to stretch the profession and our students. So key points. Shared leadership is necessary to address global food security. There are no simple technical solutions. We need to develop leadership skills in veterinarians. We must engage veterinary students with communities and stretch them. And if veterinary medical education is going to play a significant role, it requires faculty development, including in such things as risk communication and management of polarities. Thank you.
Michael Dix, are you here? Great. Do you want to come forward or do you want us to roll? It's loading. We're going to watch a video, and the presenter is Michael Dix, who's the director of, I'm going to get this wrong, but it's the Economic Division in the AVMA. And this doesn't count.
Good morning. I'm Mike Dix, the Director of Veterinary Economics at the American Veterinary Medical Association. Welcome to Chicago and the celebration of the 150th year of AVMA. It's a great opportunity to be here today to talk about Dr. James Steele. We're celebrating his 100th birthday. You know, after World War II, veterinarians being released from the war effort moved veterinarians into a new era from managing animal health to protecting the public. Dr. James Steele seized that moment. As a result, the Veterinary Division in the Communicable Disease Center of the U.S. Public Health Service was established. This is just one of many instances in the history of the veterinary profession where something we economists call excess capacity supported important changes in the veterinary profession. Of his many strengths, Dr. Steele's ability to see and embrace unusual career possibilities as opportunities certainly played a major role in his success. While unknown to him at the time, the Great Depression, World War II, and excess capacity in clinical practice all fostered the movement of veterinary medicine into the human health field, now known as One Health. Let me take a moment to explain excess capacity. Excess capacity is the ability to produce goods and services in excess of the quantity of those goods and services demanded at an acceptable price. This is a very important concept, and it encompasses all three factors that can lead to unused capacity in an industry or profession. The first measurement is that ability to produce. This includes both the actual amount of goods and services produced and the goods and services that could be produced if the given level of human and capital resources and inventory were put to full use. The second measure is the quantity of goods and services demanded. That's the amount of goods and services that consumers are willing to pay for. The third and final factor of excess capacity is an acceptable price. An acceptable price is where the quantity of goods and services that producers are willing to produce is just equal to the quantity that consumers are willing to purchase. On the positive side, excess capacity can be a good thing. It enables a rapid increase in output when there's an increase in demand. It provides for flexibility, business expansion, innovation, and the proper maintenance of human and capital resources. On the negative side, if there are too many goods or services and people aren't willing to pay excess capacity can manifest itself in unemployment, underemployment, declining incomes, or a widening gap between need and demand. The 2013 veterinary workforce study estimates that excess capacity in veterinary services was approximately 12.5%, and that's likely to persist into the future. Those with the glass half full mindset are quick to sound a battle cry and demand a reduction in the number of graduating veterinarians. But what about those who view the glass as half full? Well, I'd suggest that there are, in fact, other alternatives. You know, Dr. Steele noted that zoonotic diseases are a public health threat for two reasons. One, they're often the source of human disease, and two, they have an impact on the supply of protein, which in turn then has an impact on public health. He went on to postulate that you can't have good human health without good animal health, and you can't have good animal health without good human health. This framing of One Health opens the door to untold possibilities for veterinarians and veterinary students who prefer to think of the glass as half full. Unfortunately, few Jim Steeles have come forward to embrace the opportunity to expand the area of influence of veterinarians by turning need into demand. And I suspect that large student debt has something to do with this. Like those in the past who were held captive by the company store, many veterinarians today forego creative endeavors to pursue more traditional employment in an effort to pay educational loans. Part of this has to do with the system of modern education. It's become ever increasingly a privilege available to those who can afford it, rather than an affordable education offered for the public good. In 1857, Senator Justin H. Morrill of Vermont offered the Morrill Act with the intention of enabling a common citizen to obtain an education. He did this because he believed that there is value in education and that it contributes to the well-being of society and the country. The Morrill Act was signed into law by President Lincoln in 1862 and established the land-grant colleges, one in each state, to provide education to the masses. For more than a century, federal and state governments supported public education, and the nation flourished as a result. But recently, the focus on colleges and universities as job training centers rather than as institutions of higher learning has led federal and state governments to reduce their support. They've reasoned that because college graduates earn more than non-graduates, there's no reason to transfer income from taxpayers to students. That the students or their parents should assume a larger burden for that education simply because they'll be earning more in the future. In less than a decade, the student share of the cost of running those colleges and universities has increased from 1/3 to 2/3. And thus we've moved from the support of public education to a system of publicly supported private colleges and universities. This is a 360-degree return back to pre-Morrill Act times, when only the wealthy few found a place in pursuit of an education and a professional career. The educational debt accumulated by veterinary students, as well as many other professional students, pushes them to pursue traditional endeavors, while at the same time there's a growing yet unacknowledged need for more veterinary resources in public health. Let me give you a simple example of where our country takes advantage of excess capacity. America has armed forces that number over 1 million, and yet we only have a few 100,000 actually engaged at any one time. The rest are held in reserve, ready to be deployed. The excess capacity in the military at any given point is quite large and is justified by the potential for new threats. Today, as a large number of emerging diseases are zoonotic, the threat is quite real, and yet there's no reserves. There's no excess capacity in veterinary public health. A recent GAO report indicated that in the event of an outbreak similar to foot and mouth disease, the government would not have sufficient resources or be sufficiently organized to deal with that threat. While the veterinary profession recognized this need in the early 1990s, and veterinary colleges moved to increase graduates in veterinary public health areas, the need never became demand. And we have to ask ourselves why. Dr. Steele was certainly a pioneer. one of the first to recognize the public service rather than the private nature of veterinary medicine. He cracked the door open at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and other federal agencies and allowed thousands of veterinarians to become an integral part of human disease detection and prevention. But even today, the role and participation of veterinarians in the public health arena is far from what it should be. The need is real and it's global. Yes, our workforce study shows that there is an excess capacity in veterinary medicine. But public health offers endless possibilities and potential for today's veterinarian. The challenge is, who's the next Dr. Steele? Which of you will crack that door to public health and open it a little wider? Whom amongst you will respond to the call and find a way to identify a potential opportunity and go after it with the zeal and determination of a Dr. Steele? Is there a visionary in this room that can see the potential and convince your colleagues in human and environmental health to include veterinarians in a robust One Health partnership? I think those veterinarians do exist and that they'll be successful in meeting that challenge. Reducing or eliminating the student debt would certainly speed up the process. I'm quite certain that Dr. Steele will be with you in spirit all the way. I'm also certain he would not look at the current workforce study and say, oh, what a mess. Rather, I think he'd look at this workforce study and say, holy cow, what a great opportunity. Thanks.
Michael Dix, can you just stand up and wave? We just want to recognize you. Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Lonnie King, Dean of the College of Veterinary Medicine at Ohio State University. It's a pleasure for me to be with you this morning. It's also a pleasure to say hi to Dr. Steele in Houston, and it's great I can actually see him in front of me this morning, so that's great. So my task is to briefly talk a little bit about preparing veterinary leaders and opportunities, and I think it comes on the heels of a good presentation of Mike Dix. So we've heard about the challenge this morning. So you can see Jim Steele a few years ago with a physician from CDC telling him, Joseph Mountain, asking him, well, what are you veterinarians going to do for public health now that the war is over? Well, you never tell an A-type personality, somebody as talented as Jim Steele, who really thrives on challenges, and give him that kind of an opportunity. So that has rung in his ears, I think, every day that he wakes up and trying to answer that question. And now he's really transferred that question to all of us. And I think we need to step back and realize and think about what is it that veterinarians really do. It's the most serious challenge of our profession is to reestablish our social responsibility. And I would suggest that One Health will really enable us to do that. And what's the evidence? Why is One Health so important? Why is it really coming into its own today? The interconnectivity of the world, these difficult problems that Will Hueston talked about as wicked, the great convergence of a 21st century melting pot of humans, animals, and animal products moving around the world, microbial swarms, the perfect microbial storm, a world in rapid motion, collapsed space, as geographers talk about, merging of people and animals, food safety, security, water issues, climate changes, infectious disease, ecology, and on and on. And now the shift to not just looking at kind of treating diseases, but really shifting to prevention and the world of One Health. So this was a paragraph that came out of the recent report from the National Academies of Science talking about another study in workforce needs. And it says the chaos of our interdependent societies of the early 21st century with soaring human populations, rapidly increasing numbers of animals, both domestic and wildlife, emerging zoonoses, environmental degradation and contamination, has created the opportunities for One Health to be more relevant than any other time in history. So if you want an opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, it's before us today. So as we
kind of exit into the future and take a look at it, you know, I was reminded of this great quote from Abigail Adams, who said, "Great necessities call forth great leaders." And I will tell you, this is a time of great necessities. And so the leadership challenge, I think, is who's going to take this on and how are we going to move this forward into One Health. So I really think of this as a very special time in veterinary medicine. This is, I believe, the 5th metamorphosis of our profession. The metamorphosis in zoological terms is when organisms undergo change, appearance, structure, and they adapt to their environment and they change. Organizations also have metamorphosis. Professional organizations have metamorphosis, and I would suggest that this is exactly what's happening in the veterinary profession. The first metamorphosis really was understanding the value and reliance of horses, and the work where horses actually won battles back in the Middle Ages, in the 19th, moving into the 19th century. The second metamorphosis was livestock epidemics that brought on human famines. It was really rinderpest, and the idea that they had to do something about these diseases and the famine that they were creating, and really started to understand the value of veterinary medicine. And that really was then also the start of the profession formally and of veterinary medical education as we move forward. The third metamorphosis was really the growth in animal agriculture. The value of food animals took off, productivity gains, great research that undergirded that, improvements in our research, and the advent of veterinary services across countries and internationally. And then the fourth metamorphosis was really the expansion of companion animal medicine, specialization, human-animal bond, and that recognition that we have 43 specializations now in veterinary medicine and counting. And I believe we're right at the crux of the change of the 5th metamorphosis that Jim Steele probably saw 2 or 3 or 4 decades ago. Right? And that is One Health, meeting society's changes, needs, and demands, the value of veterinary medicine and interdisciplinary work, a triple threat to health, the health of animals, people, and our environment, new emerging diseases, and not just public health in our future, but global food systems and biomedical research and conservation medicine, and the great landscape of the possibilities of opportunities in veterinary medicine. It's this wonderful challenge of the scope, the scale, and the influence of this profession is right on the verge, I think, of exploding if we handle this right. But I will also suggest to you, and as a veterinarian, that this is both good news and bad news, that the profession is indeed in charge of its own destiny. Are we being pulled into the future? Are we being pushed into the future? What should we do when we have these opportunities available to us? And our history really hasn't been such that we've been a profession that's been out front too much. I think we've been more pulled into the future. I think we've done very well. So I like this definition of leadership that comes from Admiral Thad Allen, who actually was put in charge of the response to the Deepwater Horizon. And somebody asked him, what is your definition of a leader or of leadership? He said, leadership is the ability to reconcile competency with opportunity. To reconcile competency with opportunity. I think we just gave you evidence for the opportunity of this, I think, the 5th metamorphosis and change of this profession. Do we have the skill set, do we have the competency and the wherewithal to take advantage of this and actually move this forward in, I think, really spectacular ways? It was John Cotter in a book called New Rules who said, if we have anything to worry about, it's less about the opportunities available to us than about our ability to acquire the skills, the knowledge to take advantage of it. Okay? So we have the opportunities. Do we have the skills and the opportunity and the competencies now to take advantage of these to move forward? This is a great quote I like from Adlai Stevenson. He said, it's hard to leave a cavalry charge if you think you look funny on a horse. I don't think we really need to look funny on the horse anymore, right? This is about leaders. And why we acknowledge today Jim Steele on his 100th birthday year, right? And a giant as a leader. I think our terminology and our understanding of leadership is actually changing, right? And leaders distinguish themselves, and I like what Will said, there's a difference between leaders and leadership. And maybe this is more about leadership. It may be not just 1 or 2 key leaders moving forward. It's about all of you developing key competencies as a group to collectively move us forward into the future. Well, what is that? What do you do? We think in longer terms. And by the way, this is how Jim Steele thinks. You think in longer terms. You look beyond units or to grasp relationships to larger realities. You influence constituents beyond their boundaries. You emphasize the intangibles of vision, of values, and motivation. This is about vision. Cope with conflicting requirements of many constituents. Well, welcome to our world today, right? And how do we manage that? There is political skill in that. And you think of terms of how you renew this over time. So that's what leaders do today. But I think rather than just thinking of leaders as heroes, as perhaps we've so often thought in the past, that definition is changing. It's a contemporary definition that suggests a profound shift from leaders as heroes to leaders as facilitators. Strategic partners and collaborators as we move forward. Our future is in the center, it's in One Health. It's not about certain leaders or certain followers. It is about circulating leaders and followers around that mission. So the scale, the impact, and the influence of this profession has never been greater. We can indeed create our future. We can acquire the skills that are necessary. We're engaged in life-changing, life-enriching work that any profession or individual would love to have. So as our stature grows, so do our responsibilities, individually and professionally. This is a galvanizing point and a moment of purpose for veterinary medicine. Jim Steele saw that a long time ago, and he brings that question to us today. We venerate the past, but it is about creating a future, and we improve what is, and we create what isn't. So how do we do that? Growing bigger minds to solve bigger problems. I tell my students, this is your time. It is growing bigger minds to solve bigger problems. Our horizon has never been more rich, nor have our possibilities really been greater or have more promise. We have to be responsible, responsive, and relevant. We have to reimagine the deepest sense of who we are as a profession and as professionals, what we do, and how we spend our time. So this is the final slide. It talks about Jim and his synergy. Good public health and good animal health provide good economic health. And that's the proof in One Health, and the opportunities is changing the value proposition that suggests that the future is better than the status quo. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. King. Dr. Juan Lubroth is the chief veterinarian of the FAO, and unfortunately he could not be here today, but he went to enormous efforts to deliver a video to my house in advance of this special event. And so Jim, Juan wanted to be here to celebrate your 100 years, and we really appreciate Dr. Lubroth's participation.
Dear Dr. James Steele, AVMA members, observers, colleagues, I apologize for not being able to be among you today. It is a great honor for me to be asked to give some words as Chief Veterinary Officer of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations in the events recognizing the person and the profession that Jim Steele and most of us represent. I will not describe the illustrious career of Dr. Steele or the gratitude of just one of thousands of veterinarians that have been touched by him. I will address to you today the pressures, the state, and the response that we face today in animal health, and carry on with Dr. Steele's work in making the world a safer place. First, the pressures, or drivers, with a short video. These are the main drivers for disease emergence, maintenance, and spread for the coming decades. These are the pressures we live in, with animal diseases becoming more and more a global risk. Risk for human health, risk for animal health, and risk for ecosystem health, not to mention safe trade. FAO's core mandate is to eradicate hunger, eliminate food insecurity and malnutrition, and ensure stewardship to our limited natural resources. Out of this mandate, I share some aspects of our state and how we can respond better. I will not address about the looming threats of H7N9, H5N1, African swine fever, foot and mouth disease, Rift Valley fever, classical swine fever, or burdens such as parasitic diseases or mastitis. Although these are excellent examples of the challenges we face for food security, safety, and wholesome trade. Rather, I will look at the changing disease landscape and the role of livestock for global health. This video shows the dynamic intercontinental transport and movement around the globe over a 24-hour period. At sea, there are, on any one day, some 40,000 cargo ships taking commodities from point A to point B. A new emerging disease is a risk to all of us within 24 hours. The only thing that can travel faster is information for early warning, preparedness and prevention, and hence the importance of reporting. These are the trends in poultry trade across the globe, representing tremendous growth to meet demands. Traffic, and just for poultry. Risk of disease introductions. Are we truly prepared? Similar maps can be made for dairy products, almonds, cucumbers, soy or beef, but not for those which occur informally or illegally, including wildlife. We as veterinarians and other interested parties here at the AVMA conference cannot really influence the growth of the world's population. And although there has been a leveling off in the past decade, the want for animal protein has not. The demand of animal protein will certainly rise. We cannot change that either, but can guide it with improved policies and governance. But with the pressure of disease drivers, threats to global health will rise too. Feeding the cities, which count to more than 50% of the world's population, is paramount. Peri-urban agriculture is important and requires sound policies, as does rural development. Can we go on acting the way we act? Animal disease decreases productivity between 25 and 33% if the animal does not die. We need to find a common vision to bring the global health risks down while meeting the challenge of the demand. How can we do this? The role of the veterinarian, veterinary education, veterinary boards, continued professional development, the OIE, and the FAO are essential. As a knowledge and development organization, FAO's work in capacity development and sharing is paramount in every project or program we implement. Through our vast network of decentralized offices all over the world, rural outreach, our reference centers, many shared with the OIE, and other centers of excellence, we bring the opportunity for dialogue across sectors, local, cross-disciplinary and intergovernmental, best practices, and introduce cost-effective technologies. FAO works in partnership with the OIE, World Health Organization, World Trade Organization, many other international, regional, and national organizations, including academia, to advance health for all. FAO's work influences policies such as the Code of Conduct for Responsible Fisheries, Codex, Natural Resource Management, use of the Global Environmental Fund, a shared concern of compliance with the Convention for Biological Weapons, and cautious to the potential of dual-purpose research. Conservation and land management through engagement of specialist groups such as IUCN, Convention of Biological Diversity, and UN's Environmental Program. FAO assists in implementing the standards at the national and local level through its multi-million-dollar portfolio in agriculture, including fisheries, forests, and animal production and health for communities, and improved national resiliencies. FAO is a key partner in the application and adaptation of research, as illustrated by our substantial cooperation with universities on all continents, as well as the promotion and implementation of OIE standards. FAO's Animal Health Service has brought in mobile phone technologies in reporting disease events and countermeasures, such as those of SMS gateway, digital pen technologies, and handheld devices whose software has been picked up by others in dealing with medfly or desert locust. FAO also advances point-of-care diagnostics to determine if there is circulating viral activity. In this case, antigen and non-structural protein pen-side tests for foot and mouth disease detection, or field validation of promising pharmaceuticals or vaccines. To safeguard the complex food chain, we need to identify critical points for improved surveillance and targeted interventions as necessary to ensure health and consumer confidence. Mapping market chains is essential for the prevention and the control of animal diseases, ensure safe food and feed, the socio-economical determinants that offer key insight to understanding of the driving forces and therefore require constant consultation and advice from and to the marketeers, transporters, and sellers. For this to occur, we have to cooperate more across countries and across disciplines to move from the current state to a more effective response. We specifically need to engage closer with our colleagues specialized in human diseases and public health, as well as the environment. One Health has to be put into practice. Later this year, FAO will publish its flagship publication, The World of Livestock 2013, Changing Disease Landscapes, Livestock in Global Health. This book will give an oversight of what is happening today, pressures and state, and what this will mean for tomorrow, response, including the role of the veterinarian. The previous World of Livestock 2011 focused on livestock and food security. If you have not read this, I encourage you to do so and share with financial and policy makers. By compiling the 2013 edition on changing disease landscapes, livestock and global health, FAO gives a signal to the world's decision makers that we cannot remain in the state we are in and must profoundly change some of our agriculture and food policies to respond to tomorrow's demands. And this will also require more cooperation than what we do today. Dialogue with the myriad of stakeholders is required: private sector, research, policy, academia, or the local pastoralists is imperative. For FAO to attain its goal of eradicating hunger, an enabling, inclusive, and efficient livestock sector will be required at local, national, and international levels. These are needs to ensure the future of our children's children. Global health is under threat. This development cannot be fully understood without recalling the pressures on our natural resources, changes in food and agriculture, imbalances in socio-economic development. The effort of FAO is to establish a livestock dialogue through the Global Agenda of Action in support of sustainable livestock sector development, and promote this through 3 issues: closing the efficiency gap. By changing production practices, we make better use of natural resources and enhance food security. Restoring value to grasslands. By improving land management, we enhance livelihoods and environmental services. The current widespread neglect of grasslands results in a high incidence of poverty in many marginal areas, but also a low productivity of land and livestock. Widespread degradation of land, water, and biodiversity resources. Managed grazing land and supportive institutional and policy frameworks can provide large benefits, such as carbon sequestration, protection of water services, and biodiversity. Managing waste, or from waste to worth. By recovering energy and nutrients from animal manure, we protect the environment. The management of livestock manure has become increasingly important to reduce the environmental impact of intensive and confined production systems. Recovering nutrients and energy contained in animal manure will not only stop pollution, but also improve public health, help the soil, reduce gas emissions, and lessen the need for fossil fuels. This will require regulatory and incentive frameworks across many stakeholders. We have to do this together. To attain a true One Health approach, we need to recognize that in the risk assessment domain, there is interconnectivity between humans, domestic, and wild animals, the environment, rather than host-agent compartments. Trust and political will is missing in the dialogue. We at FAO are applying One Health at the global level under the tripartite relationship with OIE and WHO. FAO is also translating theory into practice through outreach and engagement at the community level with animal health clubs, livestock farmer field schools, and continuing professional education. Missing is the true engagement at the national institutional level for such promising initiatives such as One Health and the Global Agenda of Action. We need your help. I will now end with another short video with the most important message at the end.